The Mongol Inferno, the burning of Russian city Vladimir and the rise of an empire. In 1238, the Mongols swept through Russia like a storm, leaving destruction in their wake. One of their most devastating attacks was the burning of Vladimir, a city that symbolized the heart of Russian power. But why did the Mongols target Vladimir? And what can this event teach us about their rise to becoming one of history's greatest empires? Let's uncover the story behind the flames. At the heart of this story lies an empire born in the rugged steppes of Central Asia. Forged under the leadership of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire grew from a coalition of fragmented nomadic tribes into one of the largest and most sophisticated empires in history. By the early 13th century, the Mongols had conquered vast swaths of Asia, from China to Persia, their armies fueled not only by fearsome warriors, but by advanced military innovations and an unparalleled ability to adapt. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the Mongol Empire splintered into various khanates, yet its expansion continued. Batu Khan, a grandson of Genghis, was charged with pushing the Mongol boundaries westward into Europe and the Russian principalities. Batu's military campaign would culminate in the conquest of Kievan Rus, a staggeringly fractured region ripe for invasion. To understand Vladimir's significance, we must first grasp the political chaos of 13th century Russia. The once unified Kievan Rus had disintegrated into a patchwork of rival principalities, each vying for dominance. Among these, the Principality of Vladimir Suzdal stood out. By the early 1200s, Vladimir was a thriving cultural, economic, and spiritual hub, its white stone cathedrals glinting proudly against the harsh Russian winters. However, the fragmentation of Kievan Rus proved disastrous. The infighting left the region ill-prepared to confront a foreign enemy as organized and relentless as the Mongols. This political vulnerability made cities like Vladimir prime targets for Batu Khan's invasion. The Mongol army was not just a collection of horsemen, it was a well-oiled engine of conquest. The foundation of the Mongols' unparalleled success lay in their speed, discipline, and strategy. Their mastery of the composite bow, coupled with the unmatched mobility of their cavalry, allowed them to outmaneuver larger, less flexible forces. Perhaps most devastating was their expertise in siege warfare. They utilized advanced siege engines acquired through their conquests of China and Persia, including battering rams, catapults, and even early forms of gunpowder weaponry. Psychological warfare, too, was a hallmark of their campaigns, spreading terror through calculated brutality that left surviving populations paralyzed with fear. In 1237, the Mongols launched their winter invasion of Rus. It began with the annihilation of Ryazan, a neighboring city of Vladimir. Survivors who managed to flee to Vladimir warned of the Mongols' approach, sharing tales of unrelenting violence and destruction. By February 1238, the Mongol forces had turned their sights on Vladimir itself. Its ruler, Prince Yuri the Kun, was away at the time, gathering forces to resist the invaders. Left without its leader, the city's defenses were entrusted to Yuri's family. Though Vladimir's walls were formidable, they were no match for the seasoned Mongol war machine. The siege of Vladimir was ruthless and swift. The Mongols encircled the city, cutting off any hope of escape or reinforcements. With their advanced siege technologies, they quickly breached Vladimir's defenses. What followed was a symphony of destruction. Fires ravaged the city as the Mongols set Vladimir ablaze, a deliberate act designed to crush both morale and resistance. The once proud Cathedral of the Assumption, where citizens sought refuge, became a fiery tomb as Mongol forces set it alight. Thousands perished, and Vladimir's heart, its culture, architecture, and life, was reduced to ash. Fire encompassed more than mere destruction for the Mongols. Its terror was symbolic, a tool for subduing populations through fear. Watching the Inferno engulf Vladimir was not only a physical defeat, but a psychological one. Fire turned the city into an uninhabitable ruin, rendering it lifeless and stark, a haunting warning to others who dared resist. When the fires subsided, Vladimir was, for all intents and purposes, gone. Its population had been massacred, or carried away as slaves. Its defenses were obliterated, and its cultural treasures reduced to rubble. What remained was a ghost city, lifeless debris standing as silent witnesses to the horrors inflicted. This loss wasn't just Vladimir's, it was a shockwave felt across Rus. News of Vladimir's destruction rippled through the principalities, spreading panic and despair. Town by town, region by region, Rus increasingly fell under Mongol control. Vladimir's obliteration marked the beginning of what is now referred to as the Mongol yoke. Under Batu Khan's administration, the conquered territories of Rus were subsumed into the Golden Horde, a vast Mongol Khanate that would dominate for the next 2 centuries. The Mongol yoke fractured Russian society and decreed a tributary system in which the surviving cities were forced to pay burdensome taxes to their Mongol overlords. Those who resisted met a fate not unlike Vladimir's. What little we know of Vladimir's fall comes from fragmented chronicles and oral traditions. Though many of the city's records were lost in the fires, survivors told of indiscriminate slaughter and the loss of loved ones and homes. For those lucky enough to escape, the burden of rebuilding would fall on their shoulders. Though Vladimir fell in 1238, the effects of its loss endured long after. Politically, the destruction of Vladimir shifted the balance of power within Rus. As older cities like Vladimir faded, new powers rose, most notably Moscow. Over the subsequent decades, Moscow grew in strength and influence, eventually becoming the spiritual and political successor to Vladimir. Psychologically, the burning of Vladimir burned itself into the cultural memory of Rus. It became a symbol of Mongol ruthlessness, an incident cemented in Russian narratives as a chapter of resilience and divine punishment. From the ashes of Vladimir and other conquests emerged not only devastation, but also the infrastructure of an interconnected empire. The Mongol Empire facilitated trade and cultural exchanges across Eurasia, linking China to Europe and the Islamic world. However, for Vladimir and the people of Rus, this era represents a period of profound suffering. What happened in Vladimir was far from an isolated incident. The Mongols employed similar tactics in other conquests, from the destruction of Baghdad in 1258 to the fall of countless cities across the Middle East and Asia. These patterns of brutal conquest underscore the Mongols' pragmatic approach to empire building, one founded on deliberate terror and efficient administration. Today, Vladimir's ruins and its reconstructed churches serve as reminders of this tumultuous period. The Cathedral of the Assumption has been partially restored, and the city remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Yet beyond its stones and monuments, Vladimir's greatest legacy lies in its role as a narrative of endurance and the resilience of the human spirit. The burning of Vladimir was not just the end of a city, it was the beginning of a new era. For the Mongols, it marked another step in their westward expansion, solidifying their dominance as a global empire. For Russia, it signified both catastrophic loss and a crucial turning point, a shift that reshaped its political, cultural, and spiritual identity. Even now, nearly 800 years later, the tragedy and transformation of Vladimir echo throughout history, reminding us of the cost of empire building and the resilience of those who rise from the ashes. Thank you for joining us in unraveling this chapter of history. Stay tuned for more stories that continue to shape the tapestry of the past.